My family laughed at my hospital job and called me a girl playing nurse. They used my name when it helped them, then mocked my warnings in front of everyone, until one invisible danger filled the room, and my real title became the only thing standing between them and disaster. My name is Dr. Wynn Calder, and for 7 years, my family told people I was playing nurse at Saint Orenda Medical Center. They said it with soft smiles, like it was harmless, like my scrubs were a costume, and my late nights were some cute little phase I had refused to outgrow. What they never said was that I was an emergency physician. What they never understood was that when storms hit the coast, when buses flipped on wet highways, when smoke filled nursing homes, when too many bodies arrived and not enough beds were ready, I was the person the hospital called first. By midnight on the night of the Palmetto Reach fundraiser, my mother would hear my real title over a fire department radio. My brother would beg me not to sign an incident report, and my father would stand under the bright hospital lights with his mouth half open, staring at my name on the command board like he was seeing his own daughter for the first time. If your family has ever made your real work sound small because they were too comfortable with the old version of you, stay with me. This is not a story about shouting until people respect you. This is about the night the truth put on a yellow command vest and walked right through a room full of people who had laughed at me for years. I grew up in Palmetto Reach, South Carolina, a low, warm town near the coast where the air smelled like salt, pine, diesel fuel, and fried shrimp depending on which road you turned down. My father, Orson Calder, built Calder Event Works out of 2 rental tents, 1 flatbed truck, and a temper strong enough to scare rain clouds. He rented chairs, lights, stages, generators, fans, banquet tables, linens, and anything else people needed when they wanted to turn an empty space into a celebration. My mother, Maribeth, handled the church calls and donor dinners. My brother, Tallis, was the golden son who could charm a bride, a mayor, and a bank officer before lunch. I was the daughter who learned early that a room could look safe and still be one loose wire away from disaster. When I was 10, I used to sit under the folding table in my father's warehouse and label his first aid kits with a marker. Bandages, burn cream, gloves, scissors. I liked knowing where things were before anyone needed them. Tallis liked the stage lights and applause. He liked shaking hands with clients. He liked driving Dad's truck through town with the Calder logo on the side like it was a flag. My father saw himself in Tallis. He saw business, legacy, continuation. With me, he saw worry. That girl watches exits before she watches people, he once told my mother. He meant it as a joke, but he was not wrong. I watched the exits because adults were always pretending everything was fine until it wasn't. A tent pole bent, a child choked on a grape, a bridesmaid fainted in August heat. A caterer burned his hand and tried to keep working because nobody wanted to ruin the reception. I understood something before I had the words for it. Emergencies do not always arrive with sirens. Sometimes they stand quietly in the corner and wait for everyone to stop paying attention. I became a doctor because I wanted to be useful when the room changed. Not helpful, not sweet, useful. I went to college in Columbia, medical school in Charleston, residency in emergency medicine, then back to Palmetto Reach because Saint Orenda Medical Center needed physicians who knew what coastal emergencies looked like. Hurricanes, chemical spills from the port road, fishing boat injuries, heat stroke at ball fields, bus crashes on Highway 17. I worked my way from resident to attending, then from attending to director of clinical disaster response. That title meant I wrote the hospital's emergency plans. It meant I trained nurses, doctors, security teams, ambulance crews, and residents on what to do when one emergency became 30. It meant fire chiefs had my cell number, EMS supervisors knew my voice on the radio, and the hospital command room had a drawer with my name taped inside it because during a major incident, I practically lived there. At home, none of that mattered. The first time my mother called me a nurse in public, I corrected her because I thought she had simply made a mistake. We were at a church oyster roast. She had her hand on my back, introducing me to a woman from the flower committee. "This is Wynn," she said. "She's one of those nurses over at Saint Orenda." I smiled and said, "Emergency physician, actually." My mother blinked, then laughed like I had interrupted a prayer with a joke. "Doctor, nurse, hospital girl, you know what I mean?" I did know what she meant. She meant all hospital work belonged in one soft, blurry category, and that category was smaller than anything Talus did with invoices, trucks, and rented chandeliers. The second time, she told a client, I helped doctors in the ER. The third time, my father said I ran around in pajamas for 12 hours and came home bossy. Talus started calling my safety reminders nurse notes. Bexley, his wife, once told me, "At least you get to wear scrubs." That's basically working in pajamas with pockets. They all laughed. I had spent that morning declaring time of death on a man whose wife still had his blood on her sleeve. I did not laugh. I corrected them for years. Then I stopped. Not because it hurt less, because every correction felt like placing a name tag on a door they refused to open. I learned to save my voice for rooms where people listened. In the ER, when I said, "Move," people moved. When I said, "We need blood," blood came. When I said, "Open the surge plan," the charge nurse did not smile and ask if I was being dramatic. She opened it. There is a certain peace in competence. A clean peace. You do the job. You know the job knows you back. But families are different. Families can look right at the strongest part of you and keep calling it a hobby, because the truth would require them to rearrange the furniture inside their own minds. The Saint Orenda fundraiser was supposed to be Talus's big night. The hospital was raising money for a new storm shelter wing, a reinforced space where patients could be moved during hurricanes when windows failed and roads flooded. The board wanted a public event at the Palmetto Reach Civic Pavilion, and Calder Event Works wanted the vendor contract for every hospital event that followed. Talus had offered a discount so deep it was almost a gift, but everybody knew it was not charity. It was marketing. If he handled the fundraiser well, every doctor, donor, city council member, and business owner in town would see the Calder name shining over the stage lights. My father was proud enough to wear a suit that still had the tailor's chalk faintly visible on one sleeve. My mother ordered new pearl earrings. Bexley had been posting rehearsal photos for a week. Talus called me 3 days before the event and said, "You'll be there, right? We put your name in the program under medical support. Makes the hospital people feel better." That was the first warning. "What do you mean you put my name in the program?" I asked. He sighed like I had already become inconvenient. "Just that you're helping coordinate medical support? You work there. It looks good." I told him my name did not go on anything I had not reviewed. He said, "Wynn, don't start." I asked about generators, cords, ventilation, emergency exits, backup lighting, and carbon monoxide detectors because the Civic Pavilion had an enclosed loading bay behind the main hall, and I knew Calder crews sometimes used that covered space when rain threatened. Talus made a sound that was almost a laugh. "This is a fundraiser, not a hurricane drill." I sent him a checklist anyway. Generator placement, exhaust clearance, no running engines under covered bays. CO detectors active, exit paths open, no cords under rugs. Fuel stored outside. He responded to the family group chat, not to me privately. Nurse Wynn has diagnosed my generator with anxiety. My mother sent 3 laughing emojis. Bexley sent, "Poor generator, thoughts and prayers." My father sent nothing, which was worse in its own way because silence had always been the Calder family's most polished tool. The night of the fundraiser, rain hung over Palmetto Reach without falling, pressing the heat down over the streets. The Civic Pavilion glowed gold through the wet air. Talus had done what Talus did best. White tents outside, warm lights inside, palm fronds around the stage, silver donation boxes on linen tables, a string quartet near the north wall, and a big blue banner that read Saint Orenda, Storm Shelter Fund. The room smelled like lemon polish, barbecue glaze, perfume, and hot electrical cables. I arrived in a navy dress because I had come as a guest, not staff. No white coat, no badge around my neck. My hair was pinned low at the back of my head. I had worked a 12-hour shift the night before, slept 4 hours, and still came because my father had asked me once, quietly, through my mother. "Your daddy wants the whole family there," Maribeth had said, as if I was not already part of it. My mother found me near the donor table with Eudora Pels, one of her church friends, a woman who treated gossip like a covered dish she had brought to share. "There she is," Maribeth said, taking my arm. "Our Wynn. She plays nurse over at Saint Orenda, so now she thinks every event needs a medical inspection." Eudora smiled with polite confusion. How nice. Nursing is such a calling. I took one breath. Just one. "I'm an emergency physician," I said. "I direct clinical disaster response for the hospital." My mother patted my wrist. "That's what I said, honey. Hospital things." She turned to Eudora before I could answer. "Tallis is the one running the whole production tonight. You should see what he's built." And there it was again. My life folded into hospital things. My brother's rentals turned into legacy. I walked the room because that is what my body does when I enter a public space. I looked at exits, crowd size, tables, cords, water stations, the location of the automated external defibrillator on the west wall. The main hall was beautiful. The problem was behind it. A plastic rain curtain had been dropped across the open side of the loading bay. I could hear a generator running, low and steady, too close to the building. 2 tall cooling fans were pulling air from that direction toward the hall because the air conditioning was struggling. I found Tallis near the stage, wearing a cream jacket and the smile he used when money was in the room. "You need to shut that generator down or move it," I said quietly. "The exhaust is trapped by the rain curtain, and those fans are pulling air inside." His smile stayed in place, but his eyes went flat. "Not tonight." "Yes, tonight," I said. "Where are the CO detectors?" He looked over my shoulder, already searching for someone more pleasant. "Do not turn my biggest night into one of your hospital drills." Bexley appeared beside him with a tray of donor ribbons. "She can't help it," she said lightly. "Some people wear scrubs too long and start diagnosing furniture." Tallis laughed. A donor behind them laughed too, because cruelty always looks safer when it comes dressed as a family joke. I could have pushed harder right then. Maybe I should have. That question would sit with me later. But at that moment, the room was full. The mayor had arrived, the hospital board chair was near the front, and my brother was looking at me like I was one raised voice away from ruining his career. So I did what women in families like mine learn to do before they learn long division. I made a note inside myself and kept watching. That is the part people misunderstand about restraint. It is not weakness. Sometimes restraint is surveillance. Sometimes silence is not surrender. Sometimes it is the last quiet second before the alarm goes off. The program began at 7. My father took the stage first, and the room gave him the kind of applause small towns reserve for men who have hauled tables in church parking lots for 30 years. Wynn Calder had built weddings, fish fries, graduation parties, funeral receptions, mayoral breakfasts, and storm relief tents. He had earned respect with his hands. I never denied that. He stood under the lights, broad shoulders filling his gray suit, and spoke about service, family, and building things that held people together. Then he called Tallis up beside him. "This boy," he said, voice thick with pride, "took what I started and carried it further than I ever could. Tallis builds real things. Things you can lift, wire, rent, and see." The room clapped. My mother stood near the stage, glowing. I stood by the side wall, hands folded, feeling the old familiar pinch under my ribs. I did not need him to praise me. I was too old for that hunger, or at least old enough to be ashamed of it. But I would have liked, just once, for my father to understand that some real things cannot be seen until they are the only reason a room survives. When Maribeth took the microphone to thank volunteers, she gave every name a shine. Bexley had such a gift for beauty. Tallis had his father's work ethic and his grandfather's nerve. The hospital board had a vision for our coast. Then she looked toward me with that bright social smile I had come to dread. And our Wynn is here too, keeping an eye on us because she plays nurse at Saint Orenda and worries for a living. The room chuckled. Not loudly, not cruelly maybe, but enough. A warm little wave of public dismissal. I looked at the floor for half a second, then back up. I did not move. I did not correct her this time. If you have ever been introduced in a way that erased years of your hard work, you know that moment. You know how one sentence can take your degrees, your nights, your scars, your grief, and wrap them in a joke small enough for strangers to swallow. The first symptom came during the silent auction. A violinist missed 2 notes, lowered her bow, and pressed her fingers to her temple. People smiled around her, assuming nerves. 10 minutes later, an older donor named Mr. Ellery sat down hard near the north wall and said the room was spinning. Bexley brought him sweet tea. Someone joked he had bid too high on the fishing trip. Then one of the kitchen volunteers stepped into the hall, pale and sweating, and leaned against a pillar. "I think that sauce turned on me," she said. A child near the dessert table grew sleepy and heavy against his mother's leg. 2 teenagers complained of headaches. The pattern did not shout. It whispered. Same side of the hall, same time window. Headache, dizziness, nausea, weakness. No fever, no rash, no obvious food link, no smell, no smoke, no visible danger. My eyes went to the loading bay doors. The fans were still turning. I crossed the hall fast enough that my mother noticed. "Wynn," she hissed, catching my elbow. "Please do not make a scene." I looked at her hand until she removed it. "Where is Tallis?" "He is handling donors. He is about to handle an exposure event." Her face tightened. "There you go again with the dramatic words." I did not answer. I went through the service corridor and pushed open the loading bay door. The sound hit first. Generator rumble trapped under the covered space, thick and steady. The plastic rain curtain was down. The air felt wrong. Not smoky. Not hot exactly. Just dead. A portable carbon monoxide detector should have been clipped near the door. It was not there. I saw the yellow case lying open on a shelf, empty. For 1 second, every insult in my life lined up behind that missing detector. Playing nurse, hospital things, diagnosing furniture. Nurse Wynn. Then the doctor in me took over, and the daughter stepped aside. I came back into the hall and my voice changed. People who know emergency rooms know that voice. It is not loud, it is not emotional. It is the voice that does not leave space for debate. "Everyone out," I said. The nearest guests turned. "Now, leave your bags. Walk to the front lawn. Do not go through the loading bay." Tallis appeared from behind the stage. "What are you doing?" "Shut down the generator." "Are you insane?" "Carbon monoxide exposure, multiple symptomatic patients. Shut it down now." He stared like I had slapped him. "You are not doing this at my event." I stepped closer. "Tallis, if you make me choose between your event and this room breathing, you will lose every time." Something in my face finally reached him. He ran. I called 911 myself because the first call matters. "This is Dr. Wynn Calder at the Palmetto Reach Civic Pavilion. Suspected carbon monoxide exposure with multiple symptomatic patients. Generator operating near enclosed loading bay. Need fire, EMS, law enforcement for evacuation control, and notification to Saint Orenda for possible mass casualty activation. Current symptoms include headache, dizziness, nausea, near syncope, and altered level of alertness in at least 1 child." The dispatcher recognized my name and tone. "Copy, Dr. Calder." My mother stood 3 feet away and heard it. Her mouth opened, then closed. I pointed to the double doors. "Maribeth, move people outside." She did not move. "Mom, now." That was the first time in years she followed an instruction from me without translating it into something smaller. The next 15 minutes were not chaos because I did not allow chaos to take the lead. They were motion, controlled motion. I pulled a yellow emergency vest from the pavilion wall kit and put it on over my navy dress. Medical Incident Command was printed across the front in black letters. I opened exterior doors, ordered the fans off, and kept people away from the loading bay. I had volunteers move green tablecloths to the lawn for people who could sit upright and answer questions. I used white napkins to mark the higher risk group near the flagpole. Elderly guests, children, pregnant guests, anyone with chest pain, confusion, or fainting. Eudora Pels, still holding her auction paddle, asked, "Honey, should we call a nurse?" I looked at her, not unkindly, not gently either. "You have a doctor." She swallowed and went where I pointed. Fire Chief Roan Kittredge arrived with 2 engines and a face like carved oak. He stepped from the truck, took in the open doors, the crowd on the lawn, the powered-down generator, and me in the command vest. "Dr. Calder," he said, "you have medical command until County EMS completes transport grouping." His voice carried because firefighters know how to speak through noise. My father heard it from near the stage doors. My brother heard it while standing beside the dead generator, his cream jacket damp with sweat. My mother heard the word doctor land in the same public air where she had said playing nurse 30 minutes earlier. Roan handed me a radio. I gave him the symptom map, exposure source, ventilation status, and high-risk count. He did not question my authority. He never had. He called for additional ambulances and ordered air monitoring inside the pavilion. The first meter reading came back high enough to make one firefighter whistle under his breath. A young resident, Dr. Tenny Quaid, called from Saint Orenda on the command line. I had trained him for surge response 6 weeks earlier. His voice was tight but steady. "Dr. Calder, we have charge nurse initiating oxygen stations. Do you want the ambulance bay split?" "Yes," I said. "Red for altered or chest pain. Yellow for symptomatic stable. Green for observation after fire clears exposure. Tell respiratory I want extra non-rebreathers at intake. Notify pediatrics for at least 1 child." Tallis was close enough to hear the speaker. He stared at the phone. "That doctor is asking you what to do?" I kept my eyes on the lawn. "He is following the protocol." "Whose protocol?" I looked at him then. "Mine." The first ambulance left with Mr. Ellery on oxygen. The second took the child and his mother. 2 volunteers went next. Nobody died on that lawn. That sentence sounds simple unless you know how close and visible things can come. Carbon monoxide does not tear through a room like fire. It persuades the body quietly to stop carrying oxygen. It makes people sleepy, confused, slow, and then gone. If we had waited another 20 minutes, if the speech had continued, if the generator had kept running under that trap bay, while everyone smiled and blamed the barbecue, we would not have been holding a fundraiser anymore. We would have been counting bodies under string lights. Local news had been at the event for the hospital fundraiser, not the emergency, but cameras turned quickly when firefighters arrive. A reporter filmed from the far edge of the lawn while Roan briefed his crews and I sorted patients. I did not know until later that half of Palmetto Reach watched the clip before midnight. In the video, I stood under the flashing red wash of the engine lights, hair coming loose, navy dress wrinkled, yellow vest bright against my chest. The lower third read, Dr. Wynn Calder, Director of Clinical Disaster Response, Saint Orenda Medical Center. My mother saw it on Eudora's phone while we were still outside. Eudora did not say anything at first. She just turned the screen toward Maribeth and let my title sit between them like evidence. At Saint Orenda, we did not have a dramatic waiting room scene. There was no single door opening, no one person arriving to rescue my identity. The truth came through systems, through radios, through whiteboards, through people who knew exactly who I was because they had to. The family followed the last ambulance to the hospital and were directed through the side corridor because the main bay was full. On the other side of the glass wall, the command room was alive with clipped voices and moving hands. A board at the front read, Mass Exposure Event, Civic Pavilion. Under clinical lead, Dr. Wynn Calder. Under incident commander, Dr. Wynn Calder. Under status, 23, evaluated, 7 transported, 0 fatalities. My father stopped walking. He had seen my name before. Birthday cards, old school papers, a medical degree he never hung anywhere. But he had never seen it like that, printed as the center of a room full of professionals moving because I had told them where to go. Dr. Ione Vey, our chief medical officer, was speaking with the mayor near the command desk. She was a tall woman with silver-black hair and a voice so calm it made Panic feel embarrassed. The early identification changed the outcome, she said. Dr. Calder activated the plan before the first transport arrived. That gave us oxygen capacity, respiratory coverage, and triage separation in place. Without that, this could have been a fatality event. My father's hand went to the glass. Talus looked like the floor had shifted under him. My mother, who had spent years shrinking every title I earned, stared at the board as if the words were written in a language she should have learned a long time ago. Bexley whispered, "Director?" Nobody answered her. I worked for another hour before I spoke to my family. Patience mattered first, always. Mr. Ellery stabilized. The child stayed sleepy but alert, his oxygen level rising. The kitchen volunteer cried from embarrassment until a nurse told her crying was allowed after poisoning and public events. Fire confirmed high carbon monoxide levels near the loading bay and dangerous readings inside the back corridor. Roan's team found the missing detector on a shelf, batteries removed. I stood looking at it in its open yellow case, and for the first time all night, anger moved through me hot enough to feel clean. Not wild, not reckless, clean. The kind of anger that knows exactly where to place the blade. Talus found me outside the decontamination corridor, his cream jacket gone, his shirt collar open. He looked younger than 40 in that moment. Not charming, not golden, just scared. "Wynn," he said. "Listen." The detector kept beeping during setup. Bexley said the sound was bleeding into the microphone test. I thought it was faulty. I pulled the batteries just to get through rehearsal and forgot. I stared at him. "You removed a safety detector next to a running generator." I didn't know it was real. That is what detectors are for. He rubbed both hands over his face. The hospital contract is gone if that goes in the report. Dad's company name is on everything. Insurance will bury us. Can you write it softer? Equipment malfunction, maybe. Ventilation issue, something like that. Behind him, through the glass, my mother and father watched us. They could not hear every word, but they could read his posture. The golden sun had come to the daughter who played nurse and asked her to make the truth less expensive. Maribeth joined us before I answered. "Wynn," she said, voice low and then urgent. "He made a mistake. He's your brother." I looked at her, and years of church introductions, dinner jokes, group chat laughter, and soft public erasure stood between us. "No," I said. "People almost died because he treated safety like a joke." "Please," she whispered. "This could ruin him. You don't get to call me family only when truth becomes expensive." My father flinched as if the sentence had touched him first. Talus looked at the floor. Bexley started crying quietly, but I did not comfort her. I had comforted enough rooms. I had carried enough people through consequences they did not want to name. We moved into a small consultation room because I refused to have that conversation in a hallway where nurses were trying to save my brother's reputation from becoming more important than patient care. My family sat like strangers at a table, Maribeth with her purse clutched to her stomach, Orson with both hands flat on his knees, Talus staring at the wall, Bexley wiping her eyes with a cocktail napkin she must have carried from the pavilion. I remained standing, not to dominate them, because if I sat down, I might have started shaking, and I had earned the right not to shake in front of people who had laughed while using my name in their program. "You called my work playing nurse, because it was easier than admitting I had authority," I said. "You knew every title Talus ever earned. You remembered every contract, every client, every expansion plan. But when it came to me, suddenly every word was too complicated." My mother's face crumpled, then hardened. then crumpled again. I didn't understand all those hospital titles. You never tried, I said. There is a difference. She looked down. I turned to my father. You taught me careful work matters. You taught me to check the frame before trusting the tent. You taught me one loose connection could ruin a whole night. Then you spent years acting like my careful work was pretend because it didn't smell like sawdust and diesel. Orson shut his eyes. His voice came out rough. I didn't know how big your job was. Dad, I said softly, and somehow that softness hurt more than anger. You did not need to know how big it was to stop making it small. Tallis finally spoke. I let them say it because it kept things simple. I looked at him. No, it kept you central. That landed. He swallowed. Yeah, he said. It did. For a second, I saw the boy who used to share peanut butter crackers with me under the warehouse table, before the world taught him that being praised was easier when I was invisible. He was still my brother. That was the cruel part. Love does not vanish just because respect is missing. It stays there, bruised and stubborn, making every boundary feel like grief. I am signing the report exactly as it happened, I said. The removed detector, the generator placement, the blocked ventilation, the prior written warning, all of it. Bexley made a small sound. Tallis nodded once, slow and broken. Okay, he said. Maybe it was the first honest word he had given me that night. By morning, the patients were safe. 7 had been treated with high-flow oxygen. 2 stayed for observation. No one died. The news called it a near tragedy prevented by rapid medical command. The hospital suspended Calder event works from vendor consideration pending a safety review. Fire opened its own investigation. Tallis's phone rang until he turned it off. My mother did not call me that day. My father did not either. For once, silence did not feel like a weapon. It felt like a room after a storm when everyone is standing in the damage and pretending not to count the broken glass. 2 days later, Orson came to Saint Orenda. Not through the ER entrance, where he might have had to ask for me. He came through administration with a small brown paper package under his arm and waited outside the command room until I finished a drill review. He looked older than he had at the fundraiser. Smaller too, but not weak. Just unarmored. They let me see the board, he said. The one with your name on it. I nodded. He held out the package. Inside was a brass nameplate, heavy and polished, mounted on dark wood from the first counter Calder Event Works had ever owned. I knew because I had done homework on that counter while my father counted cash beside me. The plate read, Dr. Wynn Calder, Director of Clinical Disaster Response. My throat tightened before I could stop it. Orson looked at the floor. I should have learned your title before the rest of town did. It was not a perfect apology. Perfect apologies are rare, and most of them are written by people who want forgiveness faster than they want change. But it was honest. I could work with honest. That Sunday, Eudora Pels found my mother after church. I heard the story from 3 different people, which is how you know anything real happened in Palmetto Reach. Eudora asked, in front of the coffee table and the flower committee, Maribeth, your daughter is the doctor from the news, isn't she? My mother had a choice. She could soften it. She could say, hospital girl. She could say, helps out. She could smile and blur the truth one more time. Instead, she lifted her chin and said, yes, Dr. Wynn Calder. She directs emergency response at Saint Orenda. No joke, no laugh, no hospital things. Just my title spoken in the same social circle where she had spent years making it small. She did not say it to me, and maybe part of me will always wish she had. But reputation is built by repetition, and that day, my mother repeated the truth. Tallis entered safety compliance training before the month ended. He hated every minute of it, which I considered healthy. Bexley sent me one text that said, I'm sorry for the scrub jokes. I didn't understand. I wrote back, you understood enough to laugh. She did not respond, but she stopped making jokes. Sometimes that is the first repair. Not flowers, not speeches, just the absence of the next insult. My father came to the hospital again in August and watched a hurricane drill from behind the glass. He did not understand every word, but he stayed the whole time. When a security officer asked if he needed help finding someone, he pointed toward me and said, "That's my daughter, Dr. Calder." He said it like the title had weight, and for once, he did not try to lift it for me. He simply let it stand. I did not win because a news camera caught my name. I did not win because my family got embarrassed. I had already won every night I walked into an emergency department and became the calmest person in a room full of fear. I had already won when residents trusted my protocols, when nurses called me before panic spread, when firefighters handed me a radio because they knew I would not waste time proving myself while people needed air. My family spent years laughing at the word nurse like it was small, and they used doctor like it was too large for me. But that night, my real title did not ask for permission. It appeared on a command board while everyone else waited for instructions. So if someone keeps shrinking your work because they are afraid to admit you outgrew their version of you, remember this. Your value does not disappear because they rename it. Your training does not become pretend because they joke about it. Your title, your skill, your discipline, your long nights, your private sacrifices, they are real before anyone claps for them. Sometimes the truth arrives late. Sometimes it comes through radios, reports, oxygen masks, and the stunned silence of people who finally understand what you have been carrying. My name is Dr. Wynn Calder. I was never playing nurse. I was the reason the room survived. Commentary, explanation, and lessons from the story. Before we leave Dr. Wynn Calder and that night at the Civic Pavilion, let's slow everything down and look at what this story was really saying. Because on the surface, this was about a family mocking a woman's hospital job. They called it playing nurse. They made her years of training sound like a cute little habit. They treated her work like something small, soft, and easy to laugh at. But underneath that insult, there was something deeper. This was a story about respect. It was about how some families only recognize power when the whole world recognizes it first. And that is the part that hurts. Wynn was not waiting to become valuable. She was already valuable. She was not trying to become important. She already had an important role. She was an emergency physician and the director of clinical disaster response. That means she did not just treat patients one by one. She helped prepare an entire hospital for big emergencies. She trained teams. She wrote plans. She worked with fire crews, EMS, nurses, doctors, and security. When a situation got too big for ordinary thinking, people looked for her voice. But at home, her family did not see that. Or maybe worse, they did not want to see it. That is an important difference. Sometimes people do not understand your work because it is truly unfamiliar to them. That can happen. Not every parent understands medical titles, office roles, creative jobs, online businesses, or technical careers. But in Wynn's case, the problem was not only confusion. Her family had years to learn. They had years to ask. They had years to say, "Tell us what you actually do." Instead, they chose the easy version. They turned her job into a joke because the joke helped keep the family structure the same. In that family, Tallis was the center. He was the son who carried the family business. He was the public pride. He was the person everyone clapped for. Wynn's success disturbed that picture. If they admitted she had authority, then they would also have to admit they had been ignoring something huge. So instead of changing the picture, they made Wynn smaller. That is why the phrase playing nurse matters so much. It is not just a wrong job title, it is a full act of reduction. It takes a grown woman with training, responsibility, and command power and pushes her into a childish box. Playing means pretend. Playing means costume. Playing means not serious. So when her mother says that, she is not simply using the wrong word, she is taking away the weight of Wynn's real life. And notice how Wynn reacts. She does not explode every time. She corrects them at first. Then she stops. That does not mean she agrees. It means she has learned something painful. Some people are not asking for the truth. They are protecting their favorite lie. If you keep explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you can lose years of your energy. Wynn finally saves her voice for rooms where her voice matters. That is why the Civic Pavilion scene is so strong. The family wants to use Wynn's hospital connection, but they do not want to respect her hospital authority. Tallis puts her name in the program because it makes the event look safer and more official. But when she gives real safety warnings, he laughs. This is a very sharp point. Some people want the benefit of your name, your skill, your reputation, or your help, but they do not want the responsibility of respecting you. They want access without honor. That is exactly what Tallis does. He wants Wynn's hospital name attached to his event, but he does not want her checklist. He wants the credibility, but not the correction. He wants her presence, but not her authority. And that is where the danger begins. The carbon monoxide emergency is not random. It is connected to the family's disrespect. They mocked her safety concerns as drama. They treated her professional warning like an overreaction. Then the thing she warned them about became real. That is the power of this plot. The danger does not come out of nowhere. It grows from arrogance. It grows from dismissing the person who actually understood the risk. Carbon monoxide is also a very meaningful choice for this story. It is invisible. It has no dramatic smell. People start feeling headaches, dizziness, nausea, then sleepiness, but they do not immediately understand what is happening. That matches the emotional theme of the story. Wynn's family's disrespect was also silent and invisible to outsiders for years. It did not always look cruel. Sometimes it looked like jokes. Sometimes it looked like smiles. Sometimes it looked like, you know what I mean. But it was still harmful. It was still filling the room. That is why Wynn's skill matters. She sees patterns before others do. While everyone else is thinking about the program, the donors, the lights, and the public image, she is watching symptoms. Same side of the room, same time, same type of complaints. Generator nearby, poor ventilation, missing detector. She does not need panic to understand danger. She needs observation. This is one of the biggest lessons from Wynn's character. Real competence is often quiet before it becomes powerful. She does not run around trying to prove she is important. She simply notices what everyone else missed. Then she acts. Her voice changes. She gives instructions. She calls 911 with exact information. She opens doors. She separates patients. She gives priority to children, elderly guests, and people with worse symptoms. She coordinates with the fire chief and the hospital. In that moment, the room finally sees what her title means. Not because she gave a speech, because she did the work. That is a major difference between ego and authority. Ego needs attention before action. Authority takes action whether people are clapping or not. Wynn does not save the room to embarrass her family. She saves the room because people need air. The truth comes afterward. And look at how the truth arrives. It does not arrive through one dramatic line only. It arrives through systems. The fire chief calls her Dr. Calder. The hospital resident follows her protocol. The command vest carries her role. The news screen shows her title. The hospital board lists her as clinical lead and incident commander. The chief medical officer tells the mayor that Wynn's early action prevented deaths. This is important because it shows that Wynn's identity was never imaginary. It was already recognized everywhere, except inside her own family. That is painful, but it is also powerful. Sometimes strangers respect you more clearly than your own people. Not because strangers love you more, but because strangers may judge you by your work, while family may judge you by the old version of you they refuse to update. Wynn's family still sees the girl from the warehouse, the daughter under the folding table, the one who watched exits, the one who seemed too serious. They never updated their understanding when she became a doctor, a leader, and a disaster response director. That is something many people experience. Families can freeze you in an old role, the quiet one, the emotional one, the irresponsible one, the helper, the child, the failure, the one who thinks too much. Even after you grow, they keep using the old label because it gives them comfort. But growth does not need family permission to be real. Now let's talk about Tallis. He is not just a careless brother. He represents a specific kind of family favoritism. He has been praised for so long that correction feels like attack. When Wynn warns him about the generator, he does not hear safety. He hears threat. He thinks she is trying to ruin his night because, in his mind, the night belongs to him. That is what happens when someone is protected from accountability for too long. They start believing every rule is an insult. And when the emergency happens, Tallis's first instinct is not full responsibility. Later, he asks Wynn to make the report softer. That moment shows his character clearly. He is scared, yes. He feels guilt, yes. But he also wants the truth managed. He wants the same family system to work again, protect Tallis, soften the damage, keep the business name clean, and let Wynn absorb the pressure. This time, Wynn refuses. That refusal is the real revenge of the story. She does not scream. She does not destroy evidence. She does not make a cruel speech in public. She simply signs the report honestly. That is a very mature kind of justice. She does not punish him beyond the truth, but she also does not protect him from the truth. That difference matters. A lot of people confuse forgiveness with covering things up. They think if someone is family, you should hide the damage. But family should not mean lying about danger. Family should not mean making innocent people pay for one person's pride. Wynn understands that. Her report is not revenge because she hates Tallis. Her report is justice because people almost died. The confrontation scene is also important. Wynn finally says, "What has been under the story the whole time? You called my work playing nurse because it was easier than admitting I had authority." That line explains the emotional wound. The family did not only misunderstand her title. They rejected the authority that came with it. They were comfortable with Wynn as a helper, but uncomfortable with Wynn as a leader. This happens in real life too. Some people are fine with your success as long as it does not challenge their idea of you. They may support you when you are struggling because your struggle keeps them above you. But when you become skilled, confident, respected, or independent, suddenly they call you arrogant, dramatic, difficult, or changed. They do not hate your work. They hate what your growth forces them to admit. Wynn's father, Orson, gives us another layer. He is not written as a cartoon villain. He is a man who respects physical work. He understands tents, wires, wood, diesel, and equipment. He built a business with his hands. Because Wynn's work does not look like his work, he fails to value it. This is a common mistake. People often respect only the kind of labor they personally understand. But invisible work is still work. Mental work is work. Emotional control is work. Medical decision-making is work. Planning is work. Leadership is work. Prevention is work. In fact, some of the most important work is the work that prevents disaster before everyone can see it. That is why Wynn says he did not need to know how big her job was to stop making it small. This is one of the strongest lessons in the story. You do not have to fully understand someone's profession to respect it. You do not have to know every detail to stop mocking it. Respect can begin with humility. You can say, "I don't fully understand what you do, but I know it matters to you, and I will not turn it into a joke." Maribeth's change is subtle. She does not give a huge emotional apology directly to Wynn. Instead, she corrects the public record at church. This is realistic. Some people cannot immediately apologize in the place where they caused private pain. But they may begin by changing the way they speak when you are not there. Is that enough? Maybe not completely. But it is a start. Since Maribeth used public spaces to make Wynn small, public truth matters. She has to say, Dr. Wynn Calder. She has to say the title without shrinking it. That is not a perfect ending. And that is why it feels more real. The father's nameplate is also meaningful. It is made from the old business counter. That means Orson is finally connecting his world to Wynn's world. He is saying, in his own limited way, your work belongs beside mine. Your title has weight. He cannot erase years of dismissal with one gift, but the gift shows effort. It shows recognition. It shows that he is trying to learn the language of his daughter's life. Now, what can we learn from this story? First, never let repeated jokes convince you that your work is small. Some jokes are not jokes. Some jokes are training. They train everyone in the room to see you as less than you are. When someone keeps reducing your work, pay attention. That pattern has meaning. Second, do not confuse calmness with weakness. Wynn is calm, but she is not passive. She is controlled. There is a big difference. She does not waste energy fighting every insult, but when danger appears, she takes command. Calm power can be stronger than loud anger. Third, respect safety warnings. In the story, Tallis treats a checklist like an annoyance, but that checklist existed to protect lives. In real life, many disasters happen because someone ignores the boring rule, removes the annoying alarm, blocks the exit, skips the inspection, or laughs at the careful person. The careful person is not always dramatic. Sometimes they are the reason everyone goes home alive. Fourth, truth is not cruelty. Wynn signs the report honestly. That may hurt Tallis's business, but it protects future people. If someone creates danger, hiding it is not kindness. It is participation. Love should not require dishonesty. Fifth, your family may be late to understand you, but that does not mean your identity is late. Wynn was already Dr. Wynn Calder before the news showed her title. She was already a leader before her father saw the command board. She was already valuable before her mother said it at church. Recognition is meaningful, but it is not the source of your worth. And finally, this story reminds us that the truth has a way of finding the right room. For years, Wynn's family controlled the small rooms. Church introductions, family jokes, group chats, dinner conversations. But on the night of the fundraiser, the room got bigger. Firefighters entered, EMS entered, hospital leaders entered, reporters entered, the command board entered. Suddenly, the family's small version of Wynn could not survive in a room full of facts. That is the quiet satisfaction of this story. Wynn did not need to become someone else. She only needed the world to see what had been true all along. She was never playing nurse. She was leading the room before her family even understood there was a crisis. The end